Hi, my name's Paul Grogan, and in this gaming rules video I'm going to be teaching you how to play Pulsar 2849, designed by Vladimir Suchy and published by Czech Games Edition. In the year 2849, an interstellar energy boom is about to begin. A new star cluster rich in pulsars has been discovered, and rival corporations quickly send their survey ships to exploit its riches. During the game, players will construct huge megastructures around these pulsars known as gyrodynes. These gyrodynes harness the energy of the pulsar, which is then transmitted instantaneously across the vastness of space. The frontier is open for business. Place the star cluster board on the table. The board is two-sided, but for your first game I recommend playing with the side marked with this icon. Shuffle all the planetary system tiles face down and randomly assign 16 of them to the systems on the board. Place the remaining tile into the box without looking at it. Place the dice board anywhere on the edge of the star cluster board. Use the side according to the number of players in the game. I'm setting up a 3-player game, so I use this side. Take a number of silver dice as shown on the dice board and place them in the black hole at the centre of the main board, along with the red die. Place the yellow median marker near the dice board for now. Place the gyrodyne board anywhere on the edge of the star cluster board. The gyrodyne tiles are separated by type and stacked with the bright side up on the appropriate spaces. The only reason for the two stacks is that there's quite a lot of them, and one stack would be too high. The construction award tiles are placed on the appropriate spaces, with the 4-point tile first and then the 7-point tiles on top. Place the die modifiers board anywhere on the edge of the star cluster board and stack the die modifier tokens on the appropriate spaces. Again, make 2 stacks as one big stack would be too tall. Take the transmitter tiles and group them according to their letters A, B and C. Shuffle each group and then make a big stack with the C's on the bottom, then the B's and then the A's. Make sure that the side showing the die icon is face up. Take the top 3 transmitters and place them near the star cluster board. These are the ones currently available in round 1. Shuffle the exploration bonus tiles and place them in a face down stack nearby. There are 6 double-sided technology boards in the game, 2 boards for each category. Category 1, Category 2 and Category 3. For each category, choose one board at random and then choose a random side of that board. Place the Category 1 board next to the main board, then the Category 2 board, and finally the Category 3 board. For your first game, I recommend using boards A1, A2 and A3. Place the time marker pointing to the bottom row of technologies. This is round 1. Place the engineering cubes and the 4 cube tokens nearby. Take the 6 gold tiles and choose 3 of them at random. Then choose a random side for each one and place them next to the star cluster board. For your first game, I recommend using the ones marked with this symbol. Each player takes the following components in their chosen colour: 2 rocket figures, or 3 if playing a 2-player game, player tokens, pulsar claim rings, a 100-point tile, and one of the +/- die modifier tokens. For your first game, I would recommend not using the headquarters boards. I'll explain them at the end of this video. Take 1 rocket figure of each player and randomly place them on the turn order spaces of the dice board. This determines the order of play for the first round. Then, the player who will go first, in this case red, places one of their counters on the starting spaces of both the initiative track and the engineering track. The next player places their counters on top of that, and so on. There are special setup rules for a 2-player game. Please see page 19 of the rulebook for these. The track around the edge of the star cluster board tracks the victory points of each player. The player who is going first starts with 5 points, the next player 6, and so on. And finally, beginning with the last player and going in reverse play order, each player chooses an unoccupied entry gate and places another of their rocket figures on it. And now you're ready to play. The game is divided into 8 rounds, and each round is divided into 3 phases. In the dice phase, the silver dice are rolled, placed on the respective places, and then players take turns in choosing them. In the action phase, you will use the 2 dice that you took to perform actions. And in the production phase, you will score some points and set up for the next round. At the end of the game, there are a number of opportunities to score additional points. Points represent a corporation's success at the energy distribution industry, and the player with the most of these at the end of the game is declared the winner. Each round begins with the starting player rolling all of the dice, and then placing them on the appropriate spaces of the dice board. Leave the red die in the black hole for now. The next step is to determine where the median marker is placed, but before you do this you need to work out which one of the dice rolled is the median die. If you line up all the dice in a line, the median die is the one in the middle, in this case this 4. Place the median marker on the space with the median die, but then it may move a bit to the left or a bit to the right. To determine this, cover up all the dice showing the same value as the median die. And then, if there are more dice on the left side, move the marker one shift to the left. And if there are more dice on the right side, shift it slightly to the right. If there are the same number of dice on left and right, leave it where it is. So in our example, there are 3 dice to the left and 1 to the right, so the marker ends up here. Players then take turns to take a dice in the order of play as shown by the rocket figures. Once each player has taken 1 die, they take turns to take a second die, but this time in reverse player order. When you take a die, you must move one of your counters on either the initiative track or the engineering track, left or right, depending on the relative position of the die you took to the median marker. For example, if you were to take a 4, you must move either of your counters 1 space to the right, because the space with the 4 in it is 1 space away from the median marker. If you took the 2, you would move 2 spaces to the left. And if you took the 6, you would move one of your counters 3 spaces to the right. Moving your counter to the left is a good thing, and moving it to the right is a bad thing. I'll explain this more later on. However, for now, what you need to know is that high value dice are always better than low value dice. However, when you take a high value dice, you must move one of your counters to the right, which is bad. So it's a decision that you need to make. Do you take the high value dice and lose position on one of the tracks, or take a low value dice and gain position on the tracks? For each die you take, you must move one and only one of your counters. You cannot split the movement between the 2 tracks. And if you move onto a space with other counters, place your counter on top. You are now considered to be ahead of the other counters. For example, red first takes a 2 and chooses to move their counter on the initiative track forward 2 spaces. Then, yellow takes a 4 and moves their counter on the engineering track backwards 1 space. Then, green takes a 2 and moves their initiative counter forward 2 spaces on top of red. Green goes again and takes a 6, moving their engineering counter back 3 spaces, clearly not much of an engineer. Yellow then takes a 3, moving their engineering counter forward 1 space into the leading position on this track. And then finally, red takes a 4, moving their counter 1 space back on the initiative track. There are some special cases, like not being able to move off the end of a track. These are covered on page 8 of the rulebook. During the action phase, players take turns in the order of play shown on the dice board. On your turn, you use your dice to perform actions and then play passes to the next player. Each dice you took allows you to perform 1 action, so normally you will get to perform 2 actions. However, there are many ways in which you can gain a 3rd bonus action, and I'll explain this more later on. The cost of taking an action is usually represented by an icon showing a die of a certain number. To take this transmitter, for example, you need to spend a die of value 4, and it must be exactly 4. But if you remember during setup, each player started with one of these die modifier tokens, and you can use this to increase or decrease the value of one of your dice by 1. These tokens are 1 use only, so when you use them, return them to the die modifier board. And since we're talking about these tokens, let me explain the first action I'm going to cover, which is spending an action to buy one of these modifier tokens. You can spend a die of value 1 or 2 to buy one of these tokens. Or you can spend a die of value 2 to buy one of these tokens, which allows you to add 2 to a die. Note that you may only use 1 die modifier token per dice, so you can never increase a 3 to a 6, for example. And also note that using an action to buy one of the die modifier tokens is probably not something you're going to be doing that often during the game, because you're spending 1 action just to buy a modifier for another action, but there are certain times in the game where it can be really useful to do. The next action I'll explain is flying your survey ship. You can perform this action using a die of any value, and you move your ship from one location to another a number of segments equal to the value on the die, no more and no less. But you can use one of the die modifier tokens to even move a distance of 7 or even 8. When you move your ship, if you move through a planetary system, that's good. And if you land on a planetary system, that's even better. And you also want to try to land on the pulsars. Just passing through them is not good enough. Now, when you're moving your ship, you cannot use the same flight segment more than once on a particular flight. So, if you spend a die of value 4 and you really wanted to end up on this planetary system because they have a supply of space bananas, you could go 1, 2, 3, 4. Although you were at this location twice, you did not use the same flight segment, so that's okay. But let's take a look at this example. If you had a die of value 3 and you wanted to end your flight on this pulsar, then you could not actually do this, as that would be travelling along the same segment twice. Note that this restriction only applies to one flight, and a flight is an action, so if you used both of your dice to perform 2 separate flights, then you could use the same segment on different flights. If you are the first player to fly through or land on a planetary system, you flip the tile over. The first thing to do is look for any planets with numbers on them that are higher than the number of players. So here, if this is a 3-player game, there is one planet here which should not be available. So we take a counter of the non-player colour and place it on the planet. If you pass through a system, you get to establish a station there and can place one of your counters onto one of the lifeless planets. If there are no lifeless planets left, you can place a counter on a blue planet instead. If you land on a planetary system, however, you get to establish a station on a blue planet and you get the exploration bonus as shown on the tile. If there are no blue planets left when you land there, you get to place a counter on a lifeless planet instead, but you do not get the exploration bonus. So, to clarify, you only get the exploration bonus if you land on the system and there is a blue planet for you to build a station there. Whenever you are about to get an exploration bonus, you can choose instead to take one of the exploration bonus tiles. These contain various benefits, most of which happen immediately, such as this one, which simply gives you 5 points. Each player can only have one station per system, so if you return to that same system later on in the game, you do not get to establish a second station. Your survey ship can also claim pulsars by ending your flight on them. When you land on a pulsar, place one of your claim rings around it. It's now yours and nobody else can take it from you. Claiming a pulsar allows you to build a gyrodyne around it, which allows you to start harnessing the energy of that pulsar, which translates in the game to victory points. There are 3 steps to harnessing the energy of a pulsar. First of all, claiming the pulsar, which I've just explained when flying your survey ship, constructing a gyrodyne, and then activating that gyrodyne by starting it spinning. To start constructing a gyrodyne, you need to use one of your actions to take one of the tiles from the gyrodyne board. Gyrodynes come in 3 sizes. To take a small one, you need to use a 1, to take a medium one, you need a 2, and to take a large one, you need a 4. And note that you can actually start constructing a gyrodyne even before you've claimed a pulsar on the board. You just take the tile and place it in front of you. Once you have both a gyrodyne tile and a claimed pulsar, you can construct the gyrodyne by placing it inside your claim ring. Your survey ship does not need to be there for you to do this. Once you have constructed a gyrodyne on the board, then in order to activate it, you need to spend another action and a die of the value shown on the gyrodyne tile, in this case a 5. You flip the gyrodyne over to the other side, it's now spinning and will generate the points shown on it at the end of each round. Small gyrodynes generate 1 point per round, medium ones 2, and large ones 3. Because gyrodynes are the engines of the energy distribution industry, there is a special construction award bonus to the player who first builds 2 gyrodynes of the same size. This is represented by these construction award tiles that I mentioned during setup. So, for example, the first player to have 2 medium-sized gyrodynes on the board takes this tile and scores an immediate 7 points. Similar bonuses are available for the other 2-sized gyrodynes as well. The second player to build 2 medium-sized gyrodynes would get 4 points. You can actually get both construction awards for a size of gyrodyne yourself. If you are the first player to construct 4 gyrodynes of that size before any other player has 2 of them, then you get the 7-point bonus and the 4-point bonus as well. Huzzah! The next action I'm going to explain is taking a transmitter. Each round there are 3 transmitters available to be built. To take one, you simply spend a die matching any of the dice printed on the tile. You then take the transmitter and place one of your counters covering that die icon. If there was only one icon, the transmitter is immediately completed and is now online. Any bonus printed in a light blue box with a tick is an immediate reward that you get when the transmitter goes online, in this case 3 points. And then you flip the tile over. The ability printed in the green box with this icon means that this is something that happens during the production phase at the end of each round. Some transmitters are really good and require 2 or even 3 actions to build. When you spend the first die, take the transmitter and then cover that icon with one of your counters. Note that the green abilities here do not have a border around them. This is showing you what's on the other side of the tile, and you don't get those abilities until the transmitter is completed. You can complete it with additional actions later in the game, even on the same turn. When you take a second transmitter, you must immediately decide whether or not you want to link it to an existing one. You can only link it if there's a connection on both tiles, so you could not link it here for example. But you could link it here, even having the new transmitter upside down. If you decide not to attach it, then you cannot change your mind later on. The benefit of linking transmitters is that when both transmitters are online, you will see that the resulting image is a red die of a certain value. In this case, I have made a red die of value 3. This means that I take the red die, set it to 3, and I can take a bonus action this turn of value 3. I'll explain bonus actions more later on. Note that it is possible to link 2 transmitters showing no pips. This still gets you a bonus die, but you will need to modify it by using one of your die modifier tokens in order to make use of it. The final action I'm going to explain is patenting technologies. As mentioned in setup, there are 3 technology boards arranged like this. In round 1 of the game, only these 3 technologies are available, but as the game goes on, more and more techs unlock. So in round 3, for example, the bottom 3 rows of techs can be patented. To patent a tech, you simply spend a die of the value shown and place one of your counters onto one of the spaces. The reason there are 2 spaces is that 2 different players can patent that technology. Some technologies look like this. This means that only one player can patent it in that round, but then at the end of the round, their counter is moved here and somebody else can patent it in a later round. Each technology is fully described in the technology manual, but I'm just going to quickly tell you what the different colours of technology means. Light blue with a tick means immediate. You get that particular bonus now as a one-off effect. Dark blue with the infinity symbol means that you have that ability permanently for the rest of the game. Green with this symbol means that this happens in the production phase at the end of each round. And purple means this technology applies at the end of the game. So that's all of the actions covered. Let's get on to the very important bonus actions. You will always get at least 2 actions on your turn, one with each of the silver dice that you took, but there are ways in the game in which you can get a 3rd bonus action using the red die. The most important rule about the bonus actions is that you're only allowed to use one of them in each of your turns. So if you somehow get access to 2 bonus actions, you can only choose to use one of them. Now, a bonus action is anything which is represented by a red die. So earlier, when I linked these 2 transmitters, that gave me a bonus action of value 3, which I would have to use on that turn or lose it. This technology here gives me a bonus action. I spend a die of value 3 to place a counter here, and it splits my 3 into 2 2s, one of which is my bonus action for the round. You can also get bonus actions from exploration bonuses. For example, if I land here and establish a station, I get a bonus action of value 1. Now remember, you're only allowed to have 1 bonus action per turn, so if you used your bonus action to move to this planetary system, which then gave you another bonus action, you could not take that 2nd bonus action. But remember what I said earlier about exploration bonuses? You can always choose not to take what's printed on the tile and instead take a random exploration tile instead. And finally, there is another way in which you can buy a bonus action. If you have 4 engineering cubes, and I'll come on to how you get these soon, you can spend them to copy the silver die that was remaining on the dice board and take the red die of the same value. You don't remove the silver die though, because this option is available to all players. At the end of each round, the following 9 steps are followed. Step 1. Determine the new order of play. Rearrange the rocket figures according to the order of the counters on the initiative track. So in this case, yellow becomes the new start player for the next round, then red and then green. Step 2. Hand out engineering cubes. Players receive engineering cubes as depicted by the side of the engineering track. So in a 3-player game, whoever is farthest left gets 3 cubes. In this case, red is on top of yellow and is considered farther ahead, so gets the 3 cubes, and yellow gets 2. Now, I mentioned one use of these cubes not long ago. You can use 4 of them on your turn to buy a bonus action. But there are other uses for these cubes too: transmitters, technologies, and even endgame scoring tiles. I'll explain this more in the next chapter. Step 3. Taking penalties. If one of your counters is on the rightmost 2 positions of either the initiative or engineering track, you lose points according to where your marker is. Try to avoid it dropping that low unless it's really worth it. Step 4. Gain points and cubes for online transmitters. As mentioned earlier, any online transmitters with green boxes are processed now. Some give cubes, some give points, and some allow you to turn cubes into points, but just once per round. Step 5. Score points for spinning gyrodynes. A spinning gyrodyne is one that has been flipped over, and it produces points at this time according to its size: 1, 2 or 3. Also, depending on the current round number, spinning gyrodynes may be worth extra points. So if the time marker was here, for example, then all spinning gyrodynes would produce an extra 2 points this round. Step 6. Score points for technologies. The green technologies score points at this time. This one, for example, gives you points for each of your small spinning gyrodynes on the board. Step 7. Any transmitters not taken this round are removed from the game, and 3 new ones are dealt out from the stack. Step 8. For each technology that was patented this round by only one player, move the counter down to show that another player can now patent it. And finally, step 9. Move the time marker up to the next round. The game ends after the 8th round. After performing the production phase, proceed to the end of game scoring, which is summarised on the back of the player aid. Any purple technologies you have are now scored, and then look at the goal tiles. Each tile depicts the goal at the top and then how many points you get if you achieved that condition. Just below that is the first bonus, which you can buy with engineering cubes if you meet the requirements of the goal. And then below that is the second bonus, which you can only buy if you bought the first bonus. For example, this goal is all about technologies. If you patented 5 technologies in the game, you get 6 points. Then you can spend 4 engineering cubes to buy another 6 points. And if you do that, you can spend 1 more cube for a further 6 points. Awesome. You score 1 point for each claim you have on the board, and you score 1 point for each gyrodyne still under construction, whether on the board or not. You get 1 point for each pair of engineering cubes you have left, and then points are awarded based on the final positions of the rockets on the turn order track. And finally, you score points based on how many stations you have established in the star cluster, i.e. how many tokens you have on the board. Once the points are all added up, the player with the highest total wins the game, and ties are broken in favour of final turn order. After your first game, you probably want to start using the headquarters boards. These offer a variety of additional actions and open up new ways to score points. Each player starts the game with a randomly selected headquarters board and can choose which side they want to use. One side is slightly better if you plan on constructing lots of gyrodynes, and the other side is slightly better if you like flying your survey ship. Your headquarters board contains a list of projects organised into a sort of pyramid. To complete a project, you simply spend a die of the value shown and then place your counter on it. You can complete each project only once per game. Initially, you can only complete projects on the bottom row. To complete a project on the second row, you need to have already completed the projects beneath it. Most of the projects give you a special one-time bonus. These are all fully explained in the rulebook, but as you saw from the HQ board, the iconography is very similar to other things that you get from other parts of the game. Projects like this, however, are gate runs. This one gives you an immediate 2 points when you complete the project, but then at some point later on in the game, when you're flying your survey ship around, you can choose to activate the gate run, which gives you the indicated number of points for every gate of the depicted colour that you visit during that flight. For example, if I activate this gate run and then use a 5 to move like this, I gain 6 points because I visited 3 pink gates. This project means that you get to choose the colour that will give you points for that gate run. I'm afraid it isn't all 3. The rules for the 2 and 3 player game are shown in the back of the rulebook, along with a list of all of the goal tiles and what they do. The back of the rulebook has an icon reference for you to use during the game, and the technology manual lists all of the different techs in the game and how they can help you win. I hope you found this video useful in learning how to play Pulsar 2849. For more of my videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. And for more great games from CGE, please visit checkgames.com. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.